Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fitchburg Police and Fire Commission meeting for June 16th, 2021. It's 5 o'clock, and we have all the members here. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is to approve the message from the meeting minutes from the last two meetings, both from May 19th and May 24th. I'd like to take both those items at once, like we did last time for several meetings. I think that was efficient, but we can discuss, obviously, any questions or any corrections that people have for either one of those. So do any commissioners have any comments on the minutes? Tom?
So, and I'm looking now at page 1 of 5 of the packet. It's the first page of the May 19th minutes. Mm-hmm. And at the bottom, number 3A, it makes it seem like we did update the PFC rules to incorporate those. In context, of course, we didn't, but I thought maybe we could just add in front of the word update, we could say a proposal was presented to, and then it would go on. And then, so that's one proposed change. And then at the last sentence that trails off that page starts, this is considered a reassignment of duties and not a promotion. I think that's more of a statement, less of that was the recommendation or the argument that was presented. So we might start that sentence with, there is an argument that, and then continue, this is considered a reassignment. I just don't, that's a topic we'll touch on a little later today, I think. So I just didn't want it to look like we'd already decided this. It might be changing minds.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I think that makes sense. We obviously didn't approve that piece. We actually approved something very specific later on, which are correctly reflected in the notes. Any other council members have anything to say about that? Okay. So I think we should vote on if we want to make those specific changes to the minutes. So all members in favor of making those suggested changes, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All members that do not want to make those changes, say nay. And so we will make those changes. Sarah, can you reflect the record for that, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And thanks, Tom, for noticing that, because we will be discussing that later, obviously. The next agenda item is public appearances for non-agenda items. Any members of the public here that want to make statements or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the next agenda item.
Jeff,
yes.
Just 1 second. We wanted to add a non-agenda item. We wanted to look at extending the survey deadline. Just because we are running out of time here, and we have to date about 54 employees who've responded to the survey and about 45 members of the public. We'd like to do a little bit more outreach to get more participation on the police chief survey. It closes already next week, the 21st. So if we could at least extend it to the end of the application period, which is June 28th, at least it would give us an extra week to get more responses and make sure that we're doing a really good job of outreach. So I'd like the commission to consider extending the police chief survey deadline so we can get more participation.
Okay. Thoughts from the council or from the commission members?
I'm not opposed to that. I think it's a good idea. I said I'm not opposed to that. I think it's a good idea to extend the time so we get more community involvement in the process.
Okay. Any other thoughts or concerns on that? I hear see a lot of head shaking.
Sorry, Chief, go ahead. Oh, will that affect our timeline, Sarah? Because I think we've got our meeting on the 23rd, and if I recall right, the thought was to review the survey results at that meeting. But do you think it would impact our timeline and kind of how we move through the process at all?
No, the position's still going to be open and closing on the 28th, and we can still work through the screening criteria, which that will be the big topic for next week's meeting is, the next stage of the process. So the application scoring, the scoring of the essay question. So It'll just involve us reviewing those results before we interview, which is, we'll still be able to do it at a critical moment, but it just won't be this early in the process. So I don't think it will hinder us at all if we extend it an additional week. Good question.
I guess I would just, the second question behind that is, would it make sense to add a meeting to discuss that? Because it does seem like that's quite a few of those to go through and quite a bit to consider. And obviously, it's important that we consider everything that the public has to say about it. So we may want to, I guess, at the next meeting, take that up and see where in the timeline that lies, and see if we want to inject a meeting to discuss that specifically.
Well, we have our meeting for next week, and then we have our next one for Tuesday, July 6th, and that's the special meeting of the PFC to approve who comes in for the first interviews and to review the interview questions. So July 6th, we already have it on a schedule to meet, so we could potentially review survey results at that meeting.
But at that same meeting, we would be choosing who we would be bringing in?
Correct. It would be a long meeting unless we wanted to add an additional meeting to just review survey results. I'm open to whatever the commission desires.
Yeah, I guess I would want to make sure that we're fully considering all the public surveys. I don't know what other people on the commission, how they feel about that, but it seems pretty rushed, I guess, to do that all on the 6th.
So
We could
the,
have a special meeting the week of the 28th of June. So we have one next week, and then we could add another one for survey results right after it closes on the 28th, and maybe that Wednesday, the 30th. And then we'll have the July 6th meeting. So if the 30th works for folks, we could look at that. I'd have to check with Fact TV and the meeting room though to make sure that there's not other meetings going on. So I can follow up with the commission if we'd like to do something like that.
I guess, and we don't have to decide like right now. So we have a meeting next week on the 23rd. So I propose that we have an agenda item to discuss this again, if everybody could check their calendars, and then we could look at the overall timeline. I'm somewhat fearful, I just don't want to rush that assessment of the community input. And if it all happens, if we get those results and right before the time when we're actually choosing people to come back in, it seems like that's pretty condensed.
the other thought, and I was looking for the timeline that Sarah, you had helpfully put together for us a while back. I think part of the idea of getting the survey results was to identify the criteria for the screening panel, because I would like to have some input into what the criteria are that we want the screening panel to look at, and then also what weight we want to give certain criteria through the screening process. And if that screening process is happening late June or early July, I'd want to make sure we have input into that process as well. So that's why I think that July 6th meeting might be a little too late.
So I guess, Sarah, if you could look for a couple of dates that week between that Fact TV has opportunity. And I guess the other thing I guess we haven't really discussed is, can we move back into, depending upon if we have people appearing through Zoom, we theoretically could move to the other room that we traditionally have held our meetings in, and that would probably free up some from time and some space from using this room, right? Okay.
Perfect. Will do. I'll get some dates. It looks like from Fact TV, they just said the 28th, 29th, and 30th are all open.
Okay.
I have
If
a
it closes
question.
on the, oh, you go ahead.
Sarah,
Yeah.
could you go over the screening process? What's involved in that?
Yeah, so the first screen is HR screens for minimum qualifications. So just making sure whoever minimally meets qualifications, they have to meet those to go on to the next step. And then the next step is having a panel that will actually read through the essay questions and apply some points and scoring to the application so that you get the most qualified to review and then ultimately approve who comes in for first interviews.
And that would be the meeting where we would have input that,
On July 6th, correct. You would be able to choose of that, be able to view that list of candidates and see their qualifications and see, oh, yep, this is their scores from the screening panel, and these are our highest qualified candidates, they would move on to first panel interviews.
But prior to that, because are we going to have access to, well, we would have access to, but we would not be part of the screening process where the written part is scored.
So, actually, so today we're going to talk about all the different people at the different steps. We could potentially have a commission member be part of that first panel screening. We just can't have someone be at all steps of the process. But if a panel member is part of a step and there's a step removed, that is certainly okay. So it might be that one of the PFC members would like to be part of that initial step.
And I'm asking because we're trying to put two things together, the screening process and the surveys. So, but then if we do the survey on that week, that last week in June, we still have just less than 1 week to go over, be part of that screening process, and then get together on the 6th. That's what I think I hear.
Right, it's a tight timeline. We might want to add some, the timeline's tentative, so we can change some of the dates and make this work out so we're not, rushing things. So that's possible.
So maybe instead of the 6th, we could have the 6th to review the screening part of this process, and then what we're going to do on the 6th, we could move it to, I don't know, the 14th or another day that following week.
Yeah, I think we could. I mean, all of this is being driven by continuing to keep open the survey. And now I'm wondering if that's a good idea. I mean, if someone wants to provide input, they've had an opportunity to provide input. I'd rather not squeeze our consideration process and make it quick because we left the survey open an extra week. I'd rather put whatever resources we can into getting the survey results out or getting the survey out and having people respond and then close it on June 23rd is now what I'm thinking. If it means we're going to have to push back the process, I'd rather not push back the process.
Me, on the other hand, feel that we need to do both, and we should not cut short the survey, because it could be that many reasons why we're only getting this low turnout of responses. So it could be that we need to work harder at getting it out to the community within the next day or so. So I hear what you're saying, but in these days, more and more, the community input is very, very important.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Rosa, in regards that it is very important, but I also don't have context in regards to what the survey results were from last time as far as numbers. So are we looking at something that's currently, is that what we got last time? And maybe I don't know. Do you have those numbers by chance?
Well, I don't know, halfway through the time period, how many applications we had, looking at it from here. I think we had almost 200
Yes.
Respondents last time.
Okay.
But, at this point, halfway through when we've actually put it out to the community, I couldn't tell you how many had. So it's quite possible we'll get quite a bit more before the 23rd. But again, if we have a lot of people reaching out and starting to know about the survey this week, a few of our council members have a large contact list, and they're going to email it out. For example, I think Julia said something about 1,500 emails she can send it out tomorrow. They haven't been tomorrow. Essentially, they'll have a week to fill it out. Is that enough time for folks? So it's just a matter of trying to do a really good job of just still getting it out to the community and having it open for more time. So I think again, last time it was about 200 people that responded.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Okay. And what efforts are there in the next week, I guess, to push that? You know what I mean? So like you had said, one council person is sending out a large amount of emails. Are there other?
Yep, so we've sent this out to the Latino Support Network of Dane County. We have the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative, the Healthy Neighborhoods Navigator, who picked up paper copies and is distributing those to different neighborhoods in Fitchburg. I reached out to Wade, who manages the H&I program today, to see if he had any recommendations for other avenues. It's all over social media for Fitchburg. It's also on our city website. Anyone who signed up for a news flash with the city of Fitchburg would have received a link to it as well. So we're trying our best to use as many methods to get it out. If anyone has any ideas or thoughts about local businesses that might take a paper stack or would like, be able to send it out to different, different folks, please let me know. But that essentially is what our outreach has been so far and what we're continuing to do this week.
Question, so if I want a paper surveys just through you, I get a stack?
Yeah, I can print out, I can print out a stack of Spanish, of Hmong, of English surveys, and then I can have those ready for you anytime. Yeah.
Did we also put an ad in the, that neighborhood group, I forget what it's called, Next Door?
I don't think we put an ad in next door. I'll have to look into next door. I haven't used that for a means of communication with folks, but I will definitely look into that. Is that a free? Or I'll look into it, Rosa.
I just have a question. Is this something that we can keep our original deadline? You said it was 6/21 that the surveys, or 6/23 that they need to be completed by?
6/23.
6/23, okay, and so that's our next meeting. Is that something where if you don't get the response that you would like, or we would like, would be a larger response, can we reevaluate it then and say, hey, let's push a little harder for the next week, and then, and kind of look at it then to see, hey, we did not get the results that we wanted, we did not get the responses that we wanted. Let's push hard this week, and then we can postpone it. Maybe right now, right? Like, are we worried about something that may work out and we might get all of the responses that we'd like in this week, right? Because if we're going to put out an email to 1,500 people tomorrow, you might get a good response by then. And if we continue to share, however we're sharing this, email or hand deliver, whatever, I think a week is a long time, and I think people who are going to want to fill it, people who want to fill it out are going to fill it out. Is there a link? I know there's a link on the Police and Fire Commission website. Is there a link on like the city website, or maybe, okay, good.
City website, city's Facebook site, Twitter, all the different avenues that we use for social media. We put it to the Star as well. So yeah, trying to get it out as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that that's an excellent point. We don't know that we're not going to get the results, right? So, yeah, I don't, and like you had said, this can be a flexible process and we can make adjustments. So if we don't get at least what we received last time, it probably makes sense to revisit that at the June 23rd meeting. So I think we hold on where we were in regards to the 23rd. That's my opinion, and we reassess at that point.
We still do need to have a separate meeting for the survey evaluation?
Yeah, so,
and another meeting for the screening?
So that's a good question, Rosa. So I guess I didn't realize that those two things were so close. So if it closes on the 23rd, and we have a meeting on the 23rd?
It closes on the 21st, my apologies.
Yep,
So the
okay.
survey closes on the 21st. By the 23rd, I'll have the survey results to you. And then for our 23rd meeting, at that meeting, we had scheduled to go over benchmarks and rating criteria for application scoring and then the survey results. So we had originally planned to do both of those.
Gotcha. And we would get those results and have a little time to assess them and then come in to speak.
Yeah, one day of assessment, unfortunately, since it's closing on 21st, and you have a 23rd meeting, but you'll have them on the 22nd.
Okay.
Now, in the event that we don't get the numbers that we think we should get, then we won't have that discussion on the 23rd about the survey. Right? If we don't get the numbers by the 23rd, then we won't have that discussion, the assessment of the survey on that day.
Yes, because we would want to extend it, correct?
Extend it.
Yep. So I think for the 23rd, we need to have that as an agenda item up top to make sure that we're getting the numbers that we need. or want.
I like that, all of that idea. What if we set a threshold now and say if we don't have 200 survey responses by the 21st, then we cancel our June 23rd meeting, try and find another meeting, extend the timeline by another week for survey results to come in, and then what if we do it now so that we don't show up on the 23rd with really nothing to do?
Yep, I think that that's an excellent point, because I do think that we want to make sure that we're getting appropriate response and numbers, at least as we did last time.
Right, I like that, but Sarah, you said that there was not the only topic of discussion on that day, on the 23rd.
Right, but like, so what Tom was saying is that we shouldn't go over all the application scoring criteria if we
Without-
haven't looked at survey responses. So there would be no point to meet on the 23rd if we're not gonna have those survey responses, or if we're not gonna review those yet.
Okay, perfect.
So I could, on the 22nd, email out what we have so far for responses, and then I can call up the chair. I can call you up, Jeff, and you can let me know whether or not we'll have that meeting on the 23rd. We can always cancel it if on the 22nd we realize, yep, this isn't.
With the understanding from the commission that the threshold is, I'm going to say 200, because that is what we had last time as a response. As long as there's agreement on that, I can make that decision when she calls. But that will be the threshold.
200, I hope we do.
Okay.
That works for me.
It does for me, too. Anybody else have any comments on that or thoughts? Make sense?
I just have one comment. Just because this year with the pandemic and people starting to come out, if we could just say from 150 to 200, or do you think we should just say 200? I don't know. I just think that it's
Yeah, I'm fine with the range. Frankly, I don't think you can force, we're not gonna be able to force people to do this, right? People have had 3 weeks, I think, based on the timeline on the website. They're gonna have 2 more weeks maybe, or at least 1 more week, and if you wanna have input, get it done, I think is the bottom line. And people are already out, and if the alders can get their emails out, and the mayor can get his email out this week, suggesting people fill out the response, that's great. And then obviously the part that we can play as individual PFC members would be good too. But I agree, I think 150 to 2, I think 150 as the threshold would be just fine.
Sir, how many do we have now?
We have about 55 employees, or 54 employees, and then 45 members of the public.
And to be clear, the previous survey results, the 200, was those two combined?
Total.
Okay.
They were total. They included employees and members of the public.
Okay, yep. And so, yeah, I tend to agree that for a whole bunch of reasons, 150 seems like a reasonable threshold. And I just want to encourage, though, that we do really need to make a push and make sure that we're getting as much exposure for this as possible so we can get the responses we need. I've reached out to individuals, I've reached out to people on my email list, but I can make a greater push as well. And I just encourage everybody on the commission to do so as well.
yeah.
Okay.
Sarah, would neighborhood groups, I know the Nextdoor app is a great, a lot of people do use that, but I know like our neighborhood, we have a neighborhood email chain, maybe like the people who are in charge of neighborhoods in Fitchburg, if we can, I mean, I'm sure all 5 of us have a neighborhood contact that shares information, and if we just kind of use our resources that we have, that might give us more coverage and more reach.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, and I think all of you received the email from Chad Brecklin that had the link to the survey. You can just forward that email to your groups, and then encourage people to fill it out.
Sheena, that's a great idea, and I'm pretty sure on the city website, it lists the contacts for each of the neighborhood associations, and maybe that's a role that the PFC plays. We are outreaching, not city staff, but the PFC ourselves are reaching out to those associations and saying, we'd love your input, please do distribute it. That's a wonderful idea, I like that. And I'd be happy to draft an email and then well, I guess I can't send it around to you all, but I think that's a great idea, and I think that's a role we PFC members can play.
Yeah.
A point of clarification.
Yep.
I do think that we need to look at the social media policy, because I don't think Nextdoor is one that is allowed right now by the city. We have, I think Facebook is one of them, Instagram is another, and I'm not too sure that we have too many other social media platforms. But we can take a look at the overall policy.
And maybe the city isn't doing it on Nextdoor, but we all individually can, I think. Just push it out.
Just one last comment. Just remember, when we're talking about our community, not everybody has access to internet or savvy, dealing with technical stuff. So, I mean, we talk about social media, and internet. Just remember that so that we don't turn people off even more so.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that we often get caught up in technology and all of that stuff, but word of mouth, just talking to the people you talk to every day, that spreads pretty quick. So I think that is, that's a push that everybody here can make. Okay, so just to be clear, the PFC is going to start reaching out and making sure that we're doing everything we can. Obviously, Sarah, you have some plans in regards to doing outreach. Some council members are sending out emails. And then on the 21st, we're going to use 150 as the threshold. You're going to contact me and let me know what the numbers are and what the results of that are. Okay. Next item is update to PFC rules and regulations. The PFC rules and regulations, potential update discussion. Discussion regarding legal opinion and the ability of for the PFC to make an appointment for interim chief. Does the language need to be updated in section 2.1 of the PFC rules and regulations? So a memorandum was sent to each one of the each one of the commission members for review. I hope everybody had a chance to review that. And there were, I believe, in the conclusion, there were some recommendations, I think, from the city attorney specifically, in regards to how we could move forward. Sarah, you had this as an agenda item, I believe. So did you have one open?
Yeah, I can actually share my screen if you would like, if that would be helpful, so we can actually see section 2.1. Valerie's here on the screen if anyone has questions about the appointment of the interim chief. But first I'm going to share my screen, so just one moment here. All right, so I'm going to get you down to the rules and regs here. All right, so section 2.1, the appointment of the police and fire chief in the event of a vacancy. So we had a large discussion about this last PFC meeting, and we were looking for a legal opinion from Valerie about whether the commission approves the appointment or it just acknowledges the appointment. So a memo was created with guidance from our city attorney and our employment attorney, and that was sent to everyone for review. So at this point, it's just a matter of the commission deciding, what you'd like to do to move forward. It does sound like there's a couple of avenues for you, or a couple options, I should say. I don't know if anyone has anything to add, or Valerie, if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I'm just here if there are any questions. I'm happy to address them, but I think I've pretty much outlined in my memo sort of the process. And I guess the gist of it is really the problem we have, or the ambiguity perhaps that we have, is this issue in terms of the powers of the PFC to appoint. The concern from a legal standpoint is that the PFC's power is to appoint a chief, and then that chief serves during good behavior, right? So in discussing this with Labor Council and reviewing all of the relevant materials, it is my recommendation that the PFC not take any action that sounds like a, quote, appointment of an interim chief, and instead either do nothing and allow the chain of command and that continuity planning that's already in place sort of run its course, or in the alternative, the mayor can sort of bring that designation to the commission and the commission can approve that. But I would just be very careful to stay away from the language of appointing an interim chief. That is my recommendation. It may very well be moot. And look, folks, I'll be honest with you. There are not a lot of cases out there, right? So that deal with this, we've dug up this one 82-year-old case. which touches on this issue. My preference would be not to make case law, and that's generally my approach in most of my legal advice to the city, right? Could this go to a court, and could a court say, sure, this is inherent in the authority of the PFC after all? Sure. Could it go to a court and end up the other way, where a person who's appointed to that position then bring his cause of action and the court decides otherwise? Maybe. Either way, the city will incur pretty significant costs in the defense of that. It really creates a lot of question and ambiguity for the city in terms of what happens in the interim. So my goal is really to try to provide you with guidance that minimizes the potential exposure, not just losing in court, but going to court in the first place. I don't want to end up in court. So that's really my preference. And so that's, generally speaking, when I provide guidance, that's sort of the position that I'm coming from, is what is a safe route? What is it, what is the authority? What's out there in terms of case law and practice? I know that there are municipalities that take a different approach. There are municipalities that take this approach. There certainly may be some differing opinions out there. My job as the city attorney is to provide the city with my legal opinion. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, and I've issued that in the memo. I'm happy to address any questions that you may have specific to that memo or the issue, but the general gist of it is that it is my understanding that in the city of Fitchburg, this is something that has been anticipated in the past and is already addressed, as I mentioned, in the chain of command. The PFC does approve promotions, and so the deputy chief position, that's a person who was promoted to that position, and that promotion was approved by the PFC. It is part of that person's job duties to administer that role in the absence of a chief. And so, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of just in continuity planning, right? Because there are many other situations where a chief may be unavailable, whether it's an vacation or an extended leave of absence due to an illness or some accident or something else of that nature, sabbatical leave, something like that. And so the ability for the police department to continue its operations and its day-to-day operations, I think is pretty paramount. And so for that reason, this process is already in place. And my recommendation, like I said, would be either to follow that process informally or to formally approve continuing along that deputy chief to administer the department. So that's what I've got.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city attorney or for Sarah on this item?
I do have a question. I continue with the same position I have from the beginning when we work on the rules, that there is a process that's already established, and it's very clear in the job description of the deputy chief that he will assume or administer the department operations in the absence of the chief of police. I also read that Fitchburg and the city ordinance stated that we don't have optional powers. That would give us then the authority to approve or appoint a deputy chief. Is that correct, or am I wrong in that interpretation?
Well, you already have the authority to approve the deputy chief. When that person was up for promotion to that position, that did come before the PFC, because that is part of the PFC's purview. What optional powers grants municipality, or what optional powers grants to the PFCs and municipalities which choose to enact them, is the ability to do the sort of day-to-day management, right? And so if this board had optional powers, I think you'd have a lot of more day-to-day authority in terms of the management policies, the financial oversight. It essentially would grant the day-to-day operations and oversee those day-to-day operations of a police department. The city of Fitchburg does not have those optional powers, and so as such, you're correct that that's not there. But as far as the approval of the deputy chief, that is within the purview of the PFC.
No, excuse me. That's not what I meant, because I know that we did approve the appointment to deputy chief. That's not what we're doing now, because there's a process already in place which states very clearly that the deputy chief will assume the responsibilities of the police chief in his absence. Correct?
That's correct.
So we don't need to go into, that's why I thought when we look at this rule and we said in the event of a vacancy, the city has already established an interim process in which, and I objected to say an individual, because we specifically say that it will be the deputy chief, will assume the role of the interim chief. And that, to me, it's the change, it's the way that we should say it. Until we made a permanent appointment to police chief.
Okay, other commission members? Tom?
I have thoughts too. So, and I fully appreciate and thank you, Valerie, for the role you play to kind of keep the city out of litigation. That is much appreciated and certainly to kind of identify the risks for us. So we, the bylaw language, Rosa, that you said, it does identify the role, and this is nothing personal to the current deputy chief, but then it says until the commission meets and approves the assignment of the interim chief. So we can't kind of forget that component of our bylaws that were reviewed just back on September 16th. And, I went back and watched that meeting, and the discussion starts at 31 minutes roughly, and it ends at about 38 minutes. And we went through this issue. We identified the belief of the commission at the time, and I think Rosa, maybe not you individually, but the commission, that it was under the power of the Police and Fire Commission to make that appointment to the interim chief position.
But I think we were wrong.
Sure, okay, yeah. And, yeah, that's fair. And I understand that there's a process of continuity of command, and that's really important. And as I think Valerie said, it is there. And an option is just to leave that command in place. But I don't think that the mayor or the city council or anyone else has the power to appoint an individual to temporarily act as chief of police. That is a power for the Police and Fire Commission. And that is what the Supreme Court of Wisconsin said. And it may have been 80 years ago, but that doesn't matter. And there's not other case law because it's very clear from the Wisconsin Supreme Court that the Police and Fire Commission has that authority. And that's why there's not a lot of case law. Yes, there is a risk, but Valerie identified, I think, the appropriate path, and it follows that Supreme Court decision from the 1930s about how to make an appointment for someone to temporarily act in the role of chief of police or chief of fire until a permanent position is appointed. And that's the language in the bylaws that we had back in September, that we passed, that our city attorneys reviewed back in the fall. And I think it was correct. And respectfully, Rosa, understand that we'll disagree on that. Mm-hmm. So, other municipalities do this. They have not incurred litigation. I mean, there are cities all over the place. Green Bay, Milwaukee maybe. If I remember right, Oregon, McFarland. Their PFCs appoint an interim chief to act temporarily until a permanent chief is appointed. And I think that's appropriate. So when we're done with our discussion, I'll make a motion, and I would hope Valerie can correct me if I don't follow her recommendation or one of the options that she's laid out in the memorandum appropriately, but I would recommend that we make an appointment. I'd love to hear a recommendation from the current chief or the mayor or someone about who that individual should be, and then I think I would like for us as the PFC today to make that appointment because that's properly our power.
So my question, it's not as simple as us making a motion to change this the way I see it, because it goes beyond, we're assigning in the job description some tasks to the acting or the deputy chief that, based on what you're saying, he shouldn't have. So I'm assuming we would have to go that way also, changing a job description. I don't know what other changes we would have to make. Maybe I'm incorrect in assuming that if we want that more powers, we would have to go back and have a referendum to have that added to our responsibilities. I'm assuming the city attorney could clarify what I just said, if I'm incorrect or correct.
So the way for the optional powers to be invoked would be by referendum. That is correct. As far as what action, if any, that this board take, my recommendation would be, as I mentioned, either no action and just allowing the chain of command, or the commission could approve the deputy chief to temporarily act as chief of police again, consistent with that chain of command. I would stay away from the words approving an interim chief. That is my legal recommendation. Obviously, I'm not here to make you do what I want. My job is just to provide advice. But if this body was inclined to take an action, that would be my recommendation. An approval of the deputy chief to temporarily act as chief of police, consistent with his job description and the existing chain of command.
And just to be clear, your recommendation there is to make an approval, not an appointment, correct? Just to put it
That
to a
is
fine
correct.
point?
And it,
Okay.
and it may be academic and semantic, but I would just feel much better with
No,
that.
and I appreciate that, and that's, that's academic and semantic is what you do, so. I mean, I shouldn't say academic, but certainly semantic. I guess I approach this from a relatively, I'm not an attorney, don't have a lot of experience in this field at all. So that said, I'm a pretty practical person, and it seems to me that other municipalities do in fact appoint, or I shouldn't say that, have appointed. Because when I've gone to their websites, that's exactly what the actions they've taken have been. The League of Municipalities actually has a frequently asked question, response, and answer, basically saying, yes, the PFC should appoint. That all said, I don't know how the heck we would ever do that anyways, right? So would we go out and we would find a person that we would want to do just on a practical level? I don't see that as being a very viable option. The city has a process in place. We worked through the process of approving already and appointing an interim, or not an interim chief, but the deputy. We had confidence in that person during that process. The chief had confidence in that person during that process. So just as a practical matter, I think the process that we have in place, we went through already. I think that's probably the avenue that we should go, and we should follow the city's lead here. That said, I don't think that we should change our bylaws, because my 2 cents is that they're accurate. It doesn't mean, though, that we don't do exactly what the city attorney is saying, and we approve the current the current interim, or the deputy chief as the interim chief. I know that's maybe not be the cleanest way to do this, but it's also just a practical path forward, and I think that makes sense. That's my 2 cents. Other members of the commission have ideas and thoughts?
I still have some thoughts, but I'll give somebody else the
Yeah,
chance.
thank you, and we'll get back.
So our big discussion here is approval versus appointment, and changing our verbiage in our bylaws with that. Right, is that what we're kind of debating more or less here? Approval versus appointment? And so I think of, when I asked what situations would we not want the next appointed person to fill this position, and Mayor Richardson brought up some good points as far as if there was an issue between the deputy and the police chief, if there was some other legalities. But from how I interpret it, we are still appointing it. Like, we're still approving the appointment. So I feel that we still have a say in that, and I think that's important, as us as a commission having that say. Am I interpreting this correctly? Is that, because we could disapprove, we could say we don't approve of this person, that would automatically fill this position, right?
I don't believe so.
So I think from a practical standpoint, the question becomes, and then what happens next? Because again, in the absence of a police chief, by job description, and by virtue of the promotion of this individual and the approval by the PFC, the deputy chief still has that, not only the power, but the responsibility, the obligation really to execute those duties in the absence of a chief. Again, this isn't really a rabbit hole we necessarily want to fall down, provided that there aren't any issues. That, there are many different hypothetical scenarios we could try to solve, but it's hard to foresee every situation, and we would have to know what other options really were available. But provided that the board isn't looking to do something drastically different, again, getting back to the language, I would stay away from the words appointment, and instead approve the designation of deputy chief to act temporarily as chief of police. I will mention too that I did reach out to a number of municipal attorneys through sort of the professional listserv that I'm a part of. And I did anecdotally hear of at least some federal lawsuits involving these types of issues. And of course, they were all settled out of court, and so there's no court decisions on those issues. They're insurance settlements. So again, I don't know that this is an enormous risk that I'm trying to steer us away from, but all risks are small until when they're in your kind of rear view mirror, and then when they're right in front of you, all of a sudden the costs are great. So if the commission's inclined to take some action, that is my recommendation. I think it minimizes the risk to the city.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm trying hard to understand why we want to put ourselves in this position right now when we have to deal with this process right now. I still think that we probably need more time in reviewing this particular rule because, Tom, you brought some information about the Supreme Court case, I don't know how many years ago, which I would love to see, read it, and try to understand it. If we don't have the person that the city has designated as the one that will take over, then what are we going to do? Then we will be in a process that we have to either hire, appoint, have what's the term? I forgot. That we have to open it. Who wants to be acting chief? When we already have someone, are we going to have sergeants, detectives, anybody who wants to apply? Because the way I see it, that's what we would be doing, looking for an individual. And that's why I objected to that word to begin with, other than the person that we already had, that the city has already designated to be. Then we would be opening up to a process, a hiring process, a promotional process. And I think at this point, I think we should just stick to what we have. This rule needs to be discussed further, in my opinion, because you have brought some information that I'm not aware of that I would like to be able to read and understand it so that I don't make decisions without that knowledge that you have. So my suggestion would be that we table this again, accept the process that we have right now, and bring it back when we have a new chief.
Tom?
So I'll stay away from hypotheticals, and I don't need to know the answer to this, but what if the deputy chief is interested in the chief position? Do people think that is a leg up on other candidates? That's a reality in this process. And also would be one example of why it might not be the right time to follow a job description. And in the hierarchy of what rules, a job description is far below a statute and a Supreme Court decision. I'm not worried about a job description. I'm worried about a statute and Supreme Court precedent more than anything else. From what I'm hearing, I don't think anyone disagrees with the idea that this is the power of the PFC to approve or appoint an interim police chief or fire chief. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I also think that in the end, I think we all probably agree with the idea of following the current process because that probably makes the most sense here. But I just want to make sure we're not giving away power of the Police and Fire Commission so that when this is an issue in 5 years, the Police and Fire Commission is subservient to the mayor or common council or someone else. Because I think that's important to protect that right and power of the Police and Fire Commission as it's laid out in the statutes.
Yeah, and I guess and that's why I suggested a sort of practical path forward, which is I think that, and it serves really, I think, most of the things that people are talking about here. I don't think we change our rule, because I think ultimately we passed that rule, the city attorney looked at it, and the rule's correct.
Well, I'm not convinced, sorry. I'm not
Oh,
convinced.
and that's fair, and that's, thank you for pointing that out, that's fair.
Right.
And there can be disagreed. I was speaking for myself. But in terms of moving forward, I think that we can not change our current policy, or I'm sorry, procedure that we laid out last year, but we can still move forward and take a vote on approving the current deputy as the interim chief. So So to that end, I think, because I think that this serves both masters, and I guess to your point, Rosa, that allows us more time, right? And it also allows us to move forward with this process in a way that seems to make sense. So I guess I would put forward a motion to not change and modify the PFC regulations that we have currently. But at the same time, approve the deputy as the acting interim chief. So at this point, I think I would like to put this to a vote for the commission so that we can move beyond this. So that is my motion that I put forward. Do I hear a second?
Second?
That's a second by Rosa, okay. And so the motion is known by everybody. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all against, say nay. And see, the ayes carry. All right. And I guess I would just say that I really appreciate the way that we had that conversation. And I think we're actually not that far off. Meaning, there definitely is disagreement, but I appreciate the way we had that conversation and how we moved it forward. And congratulations, and we're glad to have you aboard. So.
Finally.
Okay. Okay. And so the motion is known by everybody. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
That's another meeting.
Aye. Well, thank you. All against? Let's see, the ayes carry. I guess I would just say that. Go ahead, Mayor.
I think he was playing that.
Okay. All right. Next order of business is, well, we just went through that. Interim police chief approval, appointment, and announcement, and/or announcement, and I think we went through that. Sarah, we've covered that item? Okay. Yes, Chief.
Jeff, I assume that that's why the mayor has now joined the meeting, is probably for that specific agenda item?
Sure. Sorry. I didn't realize that was yours, Mayor. Yes?
Is he in our meeting? I know.
For it to loop back?
Does he want to talk?
Sarah, can you clarify that Mayor Richardson has joined the meeting
Yeah,
for that
so,
specific
Mayor-
agenda item?
Yeah, Mayor Richardson is on there, but he's muted. And Valerie, thank you very much for your time tonight. I think Valerie's leaving.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm here now. I has some problems with Zoom there. I was listening through the fact channel. I think ultimately, regardless, I think that my thought was it makes a lot of sense to have the deputy chief take over as the interim chief. And so that was kind of my recommendation. And yeah, whether or not you have to approve it or not, I think we're on the same page for that. And so hopefully, you guys kind of are willing to go along with that. If I didn't think that he was the right choice, then that'd be maybe a different conversation that we have. I have talked with the deputy chief, and I do know, so going to the questions that I had for him, and I don't think he'll mind me sharing this, is, one was, do you want to be the interim chief? Are you willing to do that position? And he said he was willing to do that. But I also did ask him the question about, do you plan to apply for the position? And he said that he does not plan to apply, which I thought was another kind of important thing, much to like Tom had said, that could be a reason why maybe you don't want him to be the interim chief. And I think that, would be for further discussion. It sounds like you guys may be talking about it more. So ultimately, I think, those two questions were really important to me, and he answered those the right way. And so that's why, I felt like he should be appointed as the interim chief. And so you guys can focus on actually getting the permanent chief, which is much more important.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And just confirming that was the mayor's item, and you don't have anything else on that, Sarah?
I have nothing else on there.
Okay, Next order of business is report from the police department.
My apologies, I'm scrolling down to grab it. There it is, finally. So as you can see from our staffing report, based on our hires on June 1st of the 4 police officers that was approved by the council at the, or I'm sorry, the commission at the May meeting, we have all of our current vacancies filled. Those 4 officers are currently at the Law Enforcement Academy at Fox Valley Tech with an anticipated completion date of October 8th. We do also have 3 officers who are on leave or restricted duty assignments that are longer than 30 days, which does equate to a total of 7 patrol positions on our patrol schedule currently unfilled. Demographic information has been updated based upon our most recent batch of hires, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for the chief on the staffing report?
One question, so on the far left of it, the retirement age eligible sworn staff, for 2021, there were 5, and I know we've had, at least that I can recall, one retirement. How many of those 5 have not yet indicated an intent to retire?
All 5. I believe we started the year with 6. So we're at 5 now, and none of the 5 have indicated what their plans are for any sort of retirement at this point in time. Obviously, they could walk in tomorrow and say, I'm done in 2 weeks, or they could be around for, 5, 10 more years. Probably not the 10, but maybe the 5.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief on the staffing report? Okay. Town of Madison hiring process update?
Sarah, I can take this one as well. Where we're at currently with the Town of Madison hiring process, I think we updated the commission most recently that there were panel interviews held with the 2 candidates that had applied for our department from the Town of Madison. Chief's interviews were held towards the end of May, was it, Matt? And we are going to begin a background on both of those candidates just to get a full picture of whether or not they would be a good fit for the culture of the Fitchburg PD. And it would be our intent to have those backgrounds wrapped up in time for the July commission meeting, the regularly scheduled or normal business meeting in July.
All right, very good. Any questions from the commission on that? All right. And we have a closed session. Would somebody please read the verbiage to send us into closed session? Tom, thanks.
I'll move that pursuant to Section 19.85, subsection 1, subsection C, Wisconsin statutes, that the commission move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically, to request the creation of an eligibility list for police officer for 1 candidate and notice to the commission of a resignation.
And do we have a second to the motion to go into closed session?
My second.
Thank you, Ron. All in favor of moving into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. We might be back. Okay. We're back into open session. And so were there any action items or motions coming out of open session? Or coming out of closed session, sorry.
So I'll move to leave.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay. All in favor of leaving the list open for one candidate, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Motion is moved. Any other areas of business that we discussed that need to be, any other motions?
So we just acknowledge the resignation of, a formal resignation of Chief Brecklin to be effective on July 12th at 11:59 PM or midnight. And just thank you very much on behalf of the whole PFC for all your service, and look forward to continuing to work with you in your new role.
Yes, thank you very much, Chief. Next, thank you. Oh, and we should, is there a second for that motion? Oh, and actually, we don't have to do that for a resignation, we're just acknowledging it. Okay. Next order of business is report from the fire department.
All right, well, we're anticipating a busy summer. I think there's a lot of people that are looking forward to summer, and as a result, I think we're going to see a lot of activity. That said, we've been running a recruitment process, a hiring process for our paid-on-call, paid-on-premise, and it has been a bumpy road, to say the least. We had about 6 to 7 people identified initially. We initially provided offers to 6. One backed away from the process. We acknowledged another firefighter that was a potential candidate. Got all of that approved, and at the end of the day, we intended to start a minimum skills process, a training process for 5 firefighters, and right now we are down to 3. That is indicative of the paid-on-call part-time firefighter element right now, fire service-wide. We are trying to get on top of that to be able to identify available talent and to also try to solicit interest to those that maybe didn't think about the fire service in the past. One of the things that we've been talking about for a while is recruitment on the whole. So what do we have to do in the next 5 to 10 years? I think if we're looking at it responsibly, we need to embrace the value of having a paid-on-call part-time contingent for as long as we possibly can. But I also think that we need to look at the ratios associated with career versus part-time employees. And that's going to come with some planning, staffing plan, and to be able to acknowledge the overall funding capabilities of the city. So sustainability is obviously something that we need to look at. So those are discussions that we'll have moving forward, but it gives you a pretty decent idea of where we sit right now, case in point, with our part-time personnel. We typically have the authorization to have 60 people as a part-time staff, and we are looking at 42 right now. That's not something that is optimal, obviously, but our numbers ebb and flow, and you've seen that in the past. It just makes sense to stay on top of those numbers and to make sure that we continually look at what we can do in order to maintain an available staff.
And
So,
Chief,
yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
just on that point, so you're saying that you have authorization for 60 positions. You've been able to fill 42 of those positions, and there are 18 positions that are still open.
Correct, on the part-time side. Yeah. And we've been supplementing some of that with support staff, and support staff aren't necessarily certified as firefighters. They help us out in other areas. They handle some of the details that don't necessarily require a certification of a firefighter. They don't staff shifts, but they are able to take care of some of the work that happens as a result of supporting things like emergency management, running errands. Sometimes it's a matter of moving vehicles around that we don't necessarily need a firefighter for. But there too, our support staff, by and large, there's a lot of retirees on that. So we have them for a while, and then there's a moment that we'll be looking at those numbers as well. So I think the thing that we've acknowledged as a fire department is we are a growing community. With a growing community comes growing pains, and we need to establish what those next steps look like. So that's basically the staffing report. I can get into some of the other personal notes, but that's going to involve the probationary status that we're moving into closed session for.
One other question for you, Chief. And thank you for breaking out the types of calls per month in our report, which is helpful. For EMS Assist, I'm curious if full fire trucks go out on those EMS Assist calls.
They do, and it's a very good question, and I'm glad that you ask it because there's a lot of people that don't necessarily understand the reason why we do that. One of the reasons is because by keeping everybody together, we keep that vehicle available for the next call. If we were to split up a crew or run them in a smaller vehicle and another call came in, they would have to go back to quarters, pick up a larger vehicle, or they'd have to respond separately. So what we try to do, and the value of having the firefighters respond, is it gives us our available staff without taking away our ability to respond to that next call. It keeps us in service while we're addressing the immediate need. Once the patient is loaded into an ambulance, for example, or the ambulance crew doesn't require our assistance any longer, we are able to put ourselves back in service and we're available for that next response, and everybody is on the truck. It's the reason why you see them shopping together too, is because of the fact that when they are together, they are available for response. So even though it looks like they're assigned to another duty, they are still available for emergency response.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about the staffing report? Okay. Would somebody move us into, make a motion to put us into closed session, please?
Actually, I'm sorry, can I ask a
Oh,
quick
yeah.
question?
Yes, of course.
Town of Madison firefighters, I know they had a paid-on-call program as well. Where are they filtering to? Are we getting any of those members?
No, and actually they had a tough time staffing the department at the end, which is why the city of Madison took over, because of the fact that their available staff was reduced and they weren't able to hire people both on the career and the paid-on-call side. Those applications, whenever we offered applications, were made available to all of those members, and whether they took advantage of it or not was something that we didn't necessarily follow up on. We just didn't see a lot of return from the town of Madison.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion for closed session?
I'll move to enter into closed session pursuant to section 1985.1, sub 1, sub C, Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to make recommendation of removal of probationary status for 2 firefighters.
And do we have a second for going to closed session?
A second.
Thank you, Ron. All in favor of moving into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we are back in open session. Any motions coming out of closed session?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the recommendation of dropping the probationary status of 2 paid on-call firefighters. And they would be Justin Schaefer and Nate Wilson.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Very good. All in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. The ayes carry, and motion so moved. Next item up on the agenda is organizational chart.
Organizational chart. So one of the things that I just wanted to put out there real quick is as we move forward to evaluate staffing capabilities in the future for the fire station or fire department, wanted to just sort of breach the subject of addressing the organizational chart. And the reason why this is important to bring up now is I'm pretty certain that one of our part-time employees who fills a deputy chief role is getting close to stepping away from the department on a response level. He puts in full-time hours even though he's a part-time employee. And so when he does step away, it'll create a significant dent in our command staff capability. There are some things that we have been trying to do from a staffing level for a while. Organizationally, we are going to have to evaluate that, and we'll keep you apprised. But I think as soon as the city administrator starts on July 12th, I might have a discussion with him about what we do to proactively address these situations and try to address ways that we can come up with a plan that makes the most sense. I can come up with a staffing plan based on best practices. If we can't afford it, it's not a viable plan. So just taking a look at a number of different things from a staffing standpoint and what's most realistic and what we can do in order to communicate the overall needs for the fire department.
And is this really you giving the commission a heads up that there may be changes coming in regards to the organizational chart in order to compensate for this?
Yeah, absolutely a discussion, and then the changes that would happen would be based on what we are able to staff from a career level versus a part-time paid on-premise level.
And maybe just high level for my own context, what does the organizational chart look like now? You mentioned, I mean, you are the chief, the deputy chief, there's a part-time deputy chief. What does the rest of that organizational chart look like?
So I have a full-time deputy chief, a part-time deputy chief. I have two division chiefs that at present are part-time employees. There has been a position request for division chief of prevention and inspection for as long as I've been here, which is over 5 years. So there's positions that have existed that have not been filled for a while that we are looking at. Right now we have 3 fire department career lieutenants. The intent at least 3 years ago was to have at least 6 career lieutenants based on the ability to promote part-time staff. Right now I have 2 part-time lieutenants. I have positions for 3 and 1 vacancy. We have not started the promotional process based on the fact that we know that there's other changes coming from our part-time staff. So those are things that have to be addressed and positions that have to be filled. I have 9 firefighters underneath the lieutenants that are career level. All of those positions are filled. And then we already talked about the paid on call. Right now we have about 60 of those members, or excuse me, 42 of those members with 60 authorized. So it's the pains of a combination part-time, and in the volunteer sense, it's even worse as far as recruitment. So from a national perspective, recruitment is on the horizon. It's a matter of what we do addressing those things in the future. What we're finding is that there's a lot of people that live in the community that typically would have volunteered or been a member of the department, but there's training requirements that are needed, a certain number of hours that need to be put in. And especially in Fitchburg, where you're dealing with a good number of people who live in a professional public that work 12 hours a day already, coming in and working another 14 is not necessarily something that everybody is capable of doing. So we're keeping an eye on it, but we absolutely have to plan for our next steps.
So observations, because it's not within our purview of the Police and Fire Commission, but the police department is low on staff, I'd say. The fire department sounds like it's low on staff, and those are essential services for the city. So as we move through budgeting time, I think it'd be nice for the elected officials and others who are part of that process appropriately to take note of that. You know, and I mentioned it last time, but our police officer to citizen ratio is below the standard, I think it's fair to say. I think it's roughly 15% of our police force is not on the streets because they're either at the academy or on a appropriate leave of absence. But with the addition of the town of Madison, we need more people. So that's just a message for the mayor and the council and anyone else who's listening.
And I think both police and fire, public safety in general, these are great career options that we can get some of our kids in all areas of our city to look at. We have the capability of pushing them in the right direction from an education standpoint. So everything from paid-on-call, internships, and all of that become options for those who are looking to get into a profession. And these are just two options. So whatever we can do to not only make our city safe, but to also hopefully employ our citizens would be great steps.
Chief, do we have explorer programs existing in our high schools?
Yeah, we have an Explorer program. The problem with COVID is that sort of took a back seat, and now our membership has dropped. That's going to take a considerable effort with the schools when they come back in session in the fall to see what kind of interest there is. Our internships run right after they graduate high school. Those that have expressed interest in the fire service, we employ them, and they earn their associate degree, their firefighter certifications, their emergency medical licenses, to the point where they are marketable at just about any fire department. So we have a tremendous amount of success with our internship in the way that about 95% of those that complete the program become employed in emergency services. So there's some very good programs. It's a matter of making sure people are aware of it. But it's one step further now because of the fact that, like we were talking about with a growing community, growing communities require services, and that's across the board. That's police, fire, and everything in between. Fact TV, too. They need more people.
Chief, I have a question. Do you guys have an official recruiter, or who's in charge of that for you guys?
So recruitment is multifaceted. We do have somebody on our support staff that works with recruitment. It's a concentrated effort from me to get out and talk to the public. It's also working with HR and trying to attend a variety of different things like job fairs, getting into the schools, reaching out to organizations that have kids from all areas of our community. So there's a number of things that we're trying to do that we're getting more successful in, but it's a work in progress.
Okay. Any other commission comments or concerns about that? Maura? Report from, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Report from Human Resources.
Okay, so we are at the step now where we wanted to discuss who would be participating in all the different steps of the process for police chief. I'd like to make a recommendation that we basically, if you have a community member that you think would be a good person to be part of different processes, that every commission member emails me those different people, unless the commission prefers to talk about specific people being part of these different steps in the process. I'm going to share my screen so that you can be reminded of the different steps and all the different panel members that we'll need. So the first part of it, we've already, as you know, gone through the equitable hiring tool where we had Rosa part of, and then our first step coming up here is going to be using those benchmarks for the application scoring. So I did have suggestions here as far as who could be involved in that. I will be definitely involved there with the screening of the minimum qualifications and helping with the benchmarks, but I included, you could have command staff, for example, if they're not applicants, or the union president, or you might want to have the union president later on at the interview stage. So these are just different ideas. You might want a community member or the chair of the public safety committee. So I kind of want to just throw it out there. Either if you want to talk about specific people, we can do that today, or if you want instead to just identify, we're going to have a community member, we'll have an employee, and then all of the members can just send me names of folks that you'd like me to reach out to. So what we're looking to do today is figure out who is going to be part of the screening, who will be part of the first panel interviews, who will be part of, the additional steps in the process, just so that we can get it on people's calendars as, summers fill up and then, these are tentative dates, of course. So I'll go back up here. So our first step would be here, the week of June 28th. Which is only in a couple of weeks. So that would be the scoring of the application. So do the members have any thoughts or ideas about who you'd like to be part of that process?
The person that scores the apps, they would need to be citizens of Fitchburg?
Not necessarily, not at all. A community member could be someone who resides in Madison or a neighboring community. So it doesn't have to be just a Fitchburg resident. It's of course great to have Fitchburg residents as part of the process throughout here, but anyone who is in the local community would be great.
And how many scores would we need?
Yeah, so for our first step, ideally, we'd like to have at least 3 people total not counting myself. So, basically 3 people that you identify for this step.
Okay. Thank you.
And are you?
Sarah, the panel that came up with the equitable hiring tool, would we want them to be a part of this, or is that, have they done their part and now we want new?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is have different people at different stages in the process, just so that, kind of breaks it up a little bit. We never want somebody to be at all steps of the process, basically. So it would be a good idea if we could reach out to different folks to be part of that. We've got the Fitchburg Diversity Inclusion Employee Resource Group. That's something that, a really great group we can tap into. We have numerous community members we've used for interviewing panels prior, for example, for city administrator. There's a lot of community leaders we can reach out to. So if you'd like to identify who you'd like me to reach out to, if you'd like to just do that via email, so you're not naming names today, or, I kind of want to put it in your decision making.
What is the tell me what the commitment looks like for this person so I can.
Yeah,
Is this
so
a day?
so we may have anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 applications that hopefully more, I don't know, but for this team to go through. And I would say probably at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes per application. I mean, so it'll get faster, but the first few will take a little bit longer once they get a handle on the benchmarks. But I would estimate about, at least a couple of days to spread it out, that they would have the week of June 28th.
And this is just screening for the minimum or minimum qualifications.
Yeah, so I screen for minimum qualification. Well, it could be a joint process, actually. It doesn't have to be just me looking at minimum qualifications. In fact, I think I would like to go that route where it's like the police officer, where you have the whole team looking to make sure they meet the minimum qualifications and then scoring them the rest of the way. So yes, so it would be looking at minimum qualifications, but also applying scores to their essay questions, to the other criteria on their application. It's kind of neat. I've done this a lot and then at the end, you have a final score for all of these applications, and you do see that your most qualified rise to the top based on those
So
essay.
they just need to be available the week of 6/28.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And via Zoom?
Yeah, it's nothing they have
I
to
think people
be
know what they're tuning
for.
into.
Yeah, so this is something I can give them access to using a system called NeoGov. So it's an online system. So it's not like I'm printing papers and giving them a stack of. I can certainly do that, though, for anyone who would prefer that. A lot of times people do like to have the paper copies in front of them, and that works too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I would like to see a pretty diverse group in regards to it's like a community member. I think having a member of the command staff or the Public Safety Commission, I think would be good just to have a grouping of if you're going to have three and yourself, just to make sure that there's a diverse sort of knowledge base represented. I think that would be a good idea. So I honestly think we should have a community member involved at every step of the way if we can. So I have a couple of names that I can email you in regards to community members. Other members of the commission?
For context, Sarah, how many other, and I know we'll get to them, but how many other panels are there? Like, how many total people are you envisioning that you need?
Yeah, so three we'll need for that first, and then step 5, which is the first panel interviews. We're going to have a need for about 5 professional panel members and then 5 with the community panel presentation. So that gives us, so ideally we're probably looking for at least, 13 or so people to be part of this process.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I think a community member at each step to the extent we can, and I don't think we'll have problems finding at least one community member for each step. And I like what you identified, here in step 3, yourself, obviously. I like the idea of the acting administrator, certainly command staff if they're not applicants. I like that. And, the chair of the Public Safety Committee, to me, I think it might be more, that individual might be more appropriate at the interview stage, just because of the role that person will play with the chief in the day-to-day operations. And then the union president, is the union president a member of the Fitchburg Police Department? Okay.
Yeah, yep.
So maybe that is an opportunity for them to kind of, I wouldn't have a problem after offering them the chance to pick which step they're interested in on behalf of the represented members.
All right. Oh, it looks like Aaron raised his hand.
Okay. Yes, Mayor?
I was just going to say, are people aware that the Public Safety Committee is consisted of 3 council members? So the chair is actually a council member. I don't know if that impacts your choice or not, but the Public Safety only has 3 members of the city council on it. So would be a council member. I just want to make sure people know that part.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I was aware of that. I like that idea, though, because not only are they, that committee is responsible for the day-to-day operations, I think, I could be wrong, but then also the council is obviously as well. So I think it would be good to have that elected official as part of the interview process, just given that understanding, my understanding.
Yeah, I guess I would just get back to diversity then in regards to having a large section of folks that are represented. So I wouldn't want to have a council person involved at every step of the way, right? So I think that as long as that's injected at one part, it makes sense. They're a member of the community, and obviously they have an impact and a say in the city we live in. But again, I think it is, for me anyways, it's just about making sure that we're representing as many different groups as we can.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess I'd second the idea. I like the idea. Certainly diversity of opinions and categories of individuals or classifications of individuals is part of the process. And I do think one alder makes sense. And the chair of the police, or I'm sorry, the chair of the Public Safety Committee to me makes the most sense. We did have another alder who was here for one of our meetings and shared his opinions. Alder Wheeler, and Alder Wheeler obviously is also a former member of the Police and Fire Commission, so he would also be a natural, I think, individual that made sense for the alder spot on any one of these different positions.
And had long standing in the police force in Madison, so I think that, yeah, he would be a good representative as well.
Very good. So just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, we're going to use a community member. We'll ask the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and then we'll potentially reach out to a command staff member if they are not an applicant. But only if we have diversity of opinions and, making sure we have a diverse group at this step. And then asking the union president to indicate which step that she would be interested in helping out with. And then, of course, reaching out to Alder Wheeler to see if he would be interested in any of the steps as well.
And then,
Can we move on? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in
ahead.
addition to that, though, I just encourage commission members to email specific individuals that they would recommend from the community specifically.
Okay.
Yes.
From an elected official alder standpoint, I don't know if based on what Sarah has written down with the council president or that their designee, I do wonder if perhaps out of courtesy, if the council president shouldn't be consulted by the commission as to who they might wish to have on with the involvement. You can certainly offer suggestions from either the chair of the Public Safety Committee or another alder, but I do think just perhaps the commission may want to consider just from the point of courtesy of reaching out to the president of the council.
Thank you for that, Chief. I think that's a good idea. I'll do that. And I guess to that end, question for the mayor, do you have recommendations in regards to this process? Because obviously you're going to be directly involved.
I think this is mirroring a lot of what we did with the state administrator, and I think Sarah did a fantastic job with that. And we obviously got a great candidate out of that. So I think that following that is a great idea. Like I said, I think a month ago, maybe, I'm happy to help wherever you need me, whether it's, helping with being MC in that one piece, or I think there's a piece where I meet with everyone as well. If you're looking for citizen members, another possibility would be, I know some people have applied to the MPFC more than I could appoint anyway, so maybe those people who have applied might be candidates as well to ask if they want to be on here if you're looking for people, so that would just be another place where you can search for people who might be interested.
All right, thanks. Yeah, Sarah, you want to move on?
Excellent, perfect. So then now we'll move on to step 5. So the week of July 19th, we're looking for first panel interview folks. So I did put down some suggestions. We have city administrator, we've got the council president or the designee. So, like Chad had said, reaching out to Randy Udell first to see. A police chief from a neighboring community, I think, is a great idea to include on your first panel interviews. And any community members or business owners that you feel would be a great, that would contribute, you can feel free to email me those names, and I can reach out to as many people as I can. And then union president, of course, we can reach out to, and then we already talked about the chair of the Public Safety Committee.
One person I reached out to is the chair of the McFarland Police and Fire Commission, because they, along with Monona, are two local groups that just went through that process. And he, I think, would be interested and willing to kind of serve in this role. And he's an individual, John Stransky is his name, who has a long time history and in law enforcement, is trained many of our own in Fitchburg and around the county and frankly around the state, I think. So he's a name I asked and I can publicly mention. And I think that'd be valuable to have the insights of a police and fire commission chair who just went through the process and has that longstanding history and frankly the relationships as well. I think that'd be beneficial. So he's someone that I might recommend in addition to who you've got listed here as categories of people.
Perfect, thank you. So I might just leave it open then for commission members to email me if you know specific people you'd like me to reach out to. Feel free to email me those names. The sooner the better, because then I can try to get this on their calendar. And then when we have one of our next meetings, I can disclose with you who exactly is helping at each of the different steps. If that sounds like a good plan.
Yes, I think it does. So I just encourage everybody on the commission just to make sure that you give it thorough thought and make your recommendations to Sarah.
Perfect, and that was it. It was just trying to figure out who was going to be part of the interview and the community panel presentation and then the screening. So thank you for your help.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Any announcements from anybody?
I just have a quick one. I'm unavailable for the upcoming PFC meetings yet in June. Just wanted to share that with the commission. And then moving forward, obviously with my resignation as police chief and not necessarily being a regular attendee of these meetings, I just want to reiterate to whatever level of involvement you want or don't want moving forward, please let me know. And I can obviously be available or unavailable depending upon your wishes.
Thank you. Okay, last order of business is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned.